Okay, so we are now lesson 5, and tonight we are going to look at the other part of the Sefirot. We're going to look at the other Sefirot. So we focused last week on the first 3 Sefirot: Chachma, conception, and Bina, conceptualization, and Da'at, the application. Those are the 3 intellectual Sefirot, and tonight we are going to look at the 7 emotional Sefirot. Now, if you are an emotional person, trigger alert, you may get triggered. If you're someone who's more emotional, don't worry. Stay intellectual. Try not to go emotional. Try to stay intellectual. We are going to be analyzing on an intellectual level some of the emotions. And it's really important to try your best tonight to stay within the framework of the intellect. I'm going to do a quick overview on this page, on page 27 of your workbook. And I want to take a look at the 7 emotions, and then we're going to go throughout the evening. We're going to take a look at all of them, and we'll do a deep dive into them. The first one is at the right. We always start from the right side because Hebrew starts from the right. So the first one is chesed, which is attraction or loving kindness. It's also translated as loving kindness. Okay, so what is it? It is our ability to be attractive, our ability to love. Also important to know that chesed has no end. Loving kindness, attraction, there's no end to it. It just goes and goes and goes and goes. So if you had to say, there's no middle ground when it comes to love. It just goes. Where does love stop? On the other side, look at the left side, gevura, which is rejection. Rejection is passive. Someone who can never say no has never said yes. The moment a yes person says no, that is gevura. Yes, 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 that's all chesed. That's all the attraction, that's all the loving kindness. Gevura is no, and if you say one no, then all the yeses were yes. Some people don't have boundaries. Chesed is no boundaries. Gevura is all boundaries. So the way that a kind person has boundaries is by using gevura. This past week was the anniversary of the passing of the famous Kotzker Rebbe. He was a great Hasidic master who lived about 100 or so years ago. And he had a quote. And the quote was, "If I am I, because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I, and you are you, because you are, if I am I, and you are you, then I am I, and you are you, and now we can begin talking." I'm going to, I actually tweeted it, so I'm just going to go grab my Twitter, and I'm going to put it in your box here, so you can analyze that for a minute. Hold on a second. The joy of grabbing Twitter. Okay, look at your chat. Again, if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I and you are you. But if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I'm not I and you are not you. Enmeshment defines identity. So it's so important that we have an individual identity outside of the relationship we're in, outside of our work environment, outside of so many things that we use to define who we are, we need to have the I am I. And this is really an important balance that needs to happen because we cannot become egotistical. The ego is edging God out. EGO, edging God out. The ego is where if there's all I have no space for anything else. And in our society, we've become so used to the capital I because it is the only letter in the English language that's always capitalized. And I think our society really accentuates that capitalization of the I. It's all about me. It's about self-care and about self-love. And if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Yes, it's true. But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? The famous Mishnah from Avot. So yes, you have to be for yourself, but you can't only be for yourself. So you need to exist. But the I needs to be lowercase I. It needs to be the humble I. And not, oh, I'm too humble to do that. Oh, no, I'm too humble for that. No. We learned from Moses. Moses was the greatest leader that the Jewish people ever had. And we've had great leaders. And the reason why the Kabbalists say that he was the greatest leader is because he said, "Dear God, you gave me a job to do. I will do that job the best I can. But I want to let you know that if someone else was doing it, they'd be doing a better job." He didn't say, "I'm too humble to do that job." He said, "I will do it because God, you gave me the job to do. You told me to take the Israelites out of Egypt. I'm going to do the job, but I'm not the best person for the job. Somebody else would be doing better, but I'm going to do it anyway." That is considered the best leadership, humble leadership. And we see that in all he did. He led from behind. Chesed, Gvura, and then there's Tiferet. Tiferet is the Moses leadership. We call it integration, compassion, compassionate leadership. I can give you another example. For those of you who are parents, you may relate to this example. This is an example through parenting. Chesed, I call the helicopter parent. You know the parent that's always hovering over their kids, making sure that everything's going to be okay. Don't worry, it's all going to be okay. And they're always making sure, and the kid, is not home, and they run out, all looking all over town for the kid. And they're always helicoptering. They're always hovering over the child. That's the chesed parent. The gvura parent is the parent that is the drill sergeant. You do it, and you do it now because I said. But there's actually a balance between those two, and that is the integration parent. I call that parent the consultant. The consultant takes their kindness, but also uses boundaries. For example, the consultant will say, "I'm very sorry for you. I'm very sorry that happened. Would you like to hear what other kids have tried when that happened?" Because the consultant parent knows that that child is going to eventually grow up and that child is going to have to make their own choices. So knowing that that child is going to have to make their own choices, the consultant parent, the Tiferet parent, realizes that they're not going to always be there for them. The Tiferet parent asks a very powerful question, and that is, what's more important, love or boundaries or passion? Love is magic. Love is fun. Love can allow you to dream. But it's the boundaries that are going to allow you to be. Love is consuming. but it's boundaries that are going to be able to set you in a way that will allow you to navigate this world. So we have Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet. That's our next triangle. The triangle under that is going to be Netzach, ambition, Hod, submission. So the classic example of Netzach and Hod is the horse and the carriage. The horse is the Netzach, the ambition. Hod is submission, and Yesod is bounding. And then we have Malchut, which is nobility. That's just an overview of the 7 emotions. Now I want you to turn to page 31 on the bottom. So I'm going to actually use your workbook this week, and we're going to take a look at the emotional Sefirot through this workbook. So it's the second to last paragraph on page 31 in your workbook. The next 3 Sefirot are the emotions. In the body, Chesed corresponds to the right arm, Gevurah corresponds to the left arm, and Tiferet to the heart. Think about that. Tiferet, how we just described the consultant in the metaphor of the parent, that's the heart. That's caring. That's compassion. The Kabbalists draw parallels between the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that each one represented one of these 3 Sefirot. Abraham represented the Sefirah of Chesed, Isaac, Gevurah, and Jacob, Tiferet. So let's take a look at Chesed. Chesed, loving kindness, or we're also calling attraction, is the attribute which diffuses benevolence to all without limit. God created the world through Chesed. That is an act of creation. It says the world was built with Chesed. The world was built through loving kindness. We learned this a while ago, that God created the world because he had a taiva. But what was the action? What was the faculty that was used to create the world? That was Chesed. The attribute of Chesed, the attribute of loving kindness or attraction, is also called greatness. It's called Gedulah, because life issues from him, referring to God, to an unlimited number of worlds and creatures. We learned from Abraham that the nature of Abraham was to be benevolent, to do kindness. It's Abraham who embodies this idea of loving kindness, and we see this paradigm of endless loving kindness, that his tent was always open on all sides, and he extended the warmest hospitality to all. He became the physical embodiment of kindness. So there's no end, to the point where you literally, some people say, that person, they'll give you the shirt off their back. That's how no end there is to kindness. They will give you the shirt off their back. So kindness has no boundary. You can literally give and give and give. According to Jewish law, you're not allowed to give more than 20% of your earnings to charity, because more than 20% of your earnings may cause you to be a charity case one day. So we don't want you to become a charity case one day. And it's interesting. You'd think charity, give as much as you can. There's no limit, but there is a limit, because Gevurah comes and says, wait a second, give and give and give, but up to 20%. Chesed is saying, what do you mean 20%? Are you crazy? I want to give everything. Whatever I have, I want to give. People need it. There's a world out there and they are in need. And Chesed is correct. Chesed is correct. But Gevurah says, relax, relax. We know you're excited and we know you want to give and we know you have the best of intentions. We know you have the best of intentions, but restraint. Restraint. It has the power and the ability to limit, to contract. If God just used Chesed to create the world, what would have happened? Remember the light? If God used all the light, there would be no tzimtzum. We know, you remember these ideas from a few weeks ago. The tzimtzum is the gvura. This world could not exist if there wasn't a balance of chesed and gevura. So we know God was right. God created this world with chesed. Please shine your chesed. But too much chesed, we'd all be finished. So chesed is wonderful. And what an amazing way of looking at loving kindness. You can love somebody too much. Whoever told you that? Whoever said that you can love someone too much? You can love someone too much. God tried to make a world that was just full of love, that was just full of kindness, and it didn't work. There had to be gvura. And we look at it as this very negative thing. No, it's not negative. In the act of creation, gvura conceals from the created beings and activated a force within them. It enables us to exist as tangible entities instead of being utterly nullified. Too much of God's kindness would have zapped us into smithereens. In the relationship, the extrovert is chesed and the introvert is gevura. And we need both, because if we were both extroverts, we'd never be in. And if we were both introverts, we'd never go out. And we need that balance of in and out. So the relationship needs chesed and gevura. The patriarch Isaac is paralleled to gevura. The reason why we parallel him to gevura is because of the story of the binding. In case you're not familiar with the story, God says to Abraham, God tested Abraham. In the Bible, in the Torah, many times, one of those times, the 10th of all the tests, was he said, I want you to take your son, Isaac, and bind him on the altar. Kill your son. How old was this son of Abraham's, this Isaac? Was he 8 days old? How old was he? Well, the Torah says he was 36 years old. So while we see Abraham's test, whose test was it really? It was really Isaac's test. He was a grown man and he had to lay there on the altar and know that his father was about to kill him. That is the element of restraint. That's the ultimate element of restraint. Gevura is also called law or judgment. Judgment demands that chesed, that loving kindness, be distributed justly in proportion to the recipient's merit and not in a boundless fashion. There's a great debate in our society of how to give out the money because of COVID. People needed money. How do you give it out? Well, Chesed says, just give it out. Give everybody what they need. Come on. And Gevura says, wait, some people need more, some people need less. Let's give it out with justice in the right way. Without Gevura, without this judgment, the Chesed, the loving kindness, would have no boundaries. And they would not have the boundaries needed in order for creation to exist. And it would not have the boundaries needed for creation to continue to exist. So in terms of humanity, if Chesed was dominant, the earth would be full of sinners, since love would cover all iniquity. Don't worry, love will conquer all. I'm sure there's a song about that. I don't know it, but I'm sure there must be. If Gevura was dominant, no one could withstand the judgment. It would be the world would be a fire and brimstone place. So both Chesed and Gevura operate successfully through the middle. The same way Da'at is the balance of Chachma and Bina, Tiferet is the balance between Chesed and Gevura. What is that? So it can be compared to a garment that's dyed with many colors, that's blended in such a way that it gives rise to beauty and decoration within a person. It's called compassion or integration. Where chesed would give even to a person whom it's not proper. For example, here's my example. See a homeless person on the street. Chesed says, this person is homeless. Reach into your pocket and give them whatever you have. Give them the coat off your back because they are cold and they need a coat. That's what Chesed says. No. Actually, you should go to the bank and you should liquidate your account because this person really needs it. Gvura says, wait a second. This person is probably not the best judge of money and probably will take all of your chesed and all of your money and do bad things with it. Give them nothing, and that's going to teach them a lesson. Because they will do bad things with whatever you give them. Tiferet says, no. Tiferet says, chesed, you're wrong, and gevura, you're wrong. Take them by the hand, bring them into the local restaurant, and buy them a meal. So chesed is happy, and gevura is happy. Because chesed was able to do its kindness, and gevura was able to say boundaries, limitations. The person is going to take the money and do bad things with it. And Tiferet says, you're right, and you're right, and you're wrong, and you're wrong. So I'm going to take you by the hand with my kindness and my boundaries, and I'm going to buy you a sandwich. And both of them get their way. Tiferet wants to pity a person to whom compassion is appropriate, and then extend the benevolence as well, regardless of their worthiness. Tiferet also means truth. It's equated with truth. Emet. So in a sense, it's both chesed and gvura that agree to its flow in the body. Tiferet is the heart. And the central position of the heart in the torso mediates between right and left and creates harmony. And in the patriarchs, we liken it to Jacob, who's the son of Isaac and the grandson of Abraham. And the children of Jacob, we are called the children of Israel, or the children of Jacob, is the perfect balance of chesed and gevura. So we have chesed, gevura, and tiferet. Any questions? So what I'm going to do now, and before we go on to the next three, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms just for, 5 minutes or so, maybe 5-6 minutes. And I want you to think of examples in your life that you can use chesed, gevurah, and tiferet, and really focusing on the balance, on the heart, focusing on the tiferet. Okay, so we're just going to do, let's say, 5-6 minutes, not more than that, just to be able to process these three new Sefirot, chesed, gevurah, tiferet. Okay, and try to think of an example of something that you could have done, that you did do, that you wish you did, that you will do, based on these three, and really trying to see where the two converge. For example, I gave you the example of the homeless person. Try to find your own example, and I would love to come back here and hear some of your examples. So we're just going to throw you into these rooms here, and see you in about 5-6 minutes. Okay, what did we learn? Anything good? I see smiles, so that's good. Smiles are always good. What did we learn?
Sometimes it's very difficult to put these into your life, even if you recognize if you're overly chesed or overly gvara, that the reality of it is really challenging. That just takes a lot of practice and a lot of willingness to keep trying, especially when it's family.
I really wanted the purpose of this little adventure was to just give you an opportunity to process it and to talk about it, and at least so that it's just not like this theoretical thing, that maybe you can see how possibly it can apply to your life. So did anybody have anything?
Oh, yeah.
Any practicalities at all?
I think it's a balancing everyday act between the Gvura and Chesed, and we need always to try to balance between them, and it depends on whatever is the circumstances that we decide if we lean towards the Chesed or towards the Gvura.
Okay, I like that. That's great. What else? Anything else? Okay. You don't have to speak. You can also use the chat, by the way. You can use the chat box if you have any ideas. I'm happy to read anything that you write. But in the meantime, I'm going to move on to our next triangle. So triangle Chachma Bina Dat. We did triangle Chesed Gvura Tiferet. Now we're going to our next triangle. The right side of our triangle is Netzach. Netzach. Netzach is victory or ambition. It's the capacity of our soul to fight and to be victorious. Netzach says, I am going to get this done. Netzach is that motivator. It's the one that just is constantly pushing us and saying, get it done, get it done. If you're in a war, Netzach is the fight. It goes to the essence of who you are. Netzach can be dangerous because if you have no fight and nothing else, that's a big problem. We know people who are in war, that feeling, that emotion of fight is a very strong emotion. But Netzach is the part of us that says, I don't care if it even means giving up my life. I am going to fight for it, and that's all that matters right now. That is the Netzach. And then there is Hod. Hod is exactly the opposite of Netzach. It's the submission. It's the ability to admit, to confess, to surrender, the humility, to acknowledge that someone else is right, to acknowledge that there's some things in our lives that can't be changed, like your mom, that there are some things in your life that you could change, but you shouldn't, like your nose or your hair color. And there's some things that you could change and you must change, like your ego, like your character, like your laziness, like your fear. Netzach and Hod are often reversed. How are they reversed? People try to change the things in their life they can't change. And they don't try to change the things in their life that they should be changing. It's interesting. We give ourselves a pass. Oh, this is who I am. Oh, but you, the person I'm in the relationship with, or the person I'm pointing my finger at, you need to change. It's not me, it's you're the problem. So if we're passing the buck, we're interchanging Netzach and Hod. Think about it. Imagine if you're in a war and you use Hod, you use submission. What happens in the war? There's no fight. If you use humility in the war, there's nothing to fight against. Actually, there's no war. So on yourself, you use netzach, and on someone else, you use hod. On yourself, you use the victory. You fight your evil inclination. You fight the character traits within yourself that need to be changed. That's what you fight. And on someone else, you look at them with humility. The right side, the right eye, is for looking at is for judging yourself, and the left eye is for pirate patches. The right eye, that's why God gave us two eyes. With one eye, we judge ourselves, and with the other eye, we don't judge others. Hod says, I don't matter. That's not a healthy conversation. We don't use hod on ourselves because I do matter, and I need to be able to matter enough to be able to overpower. I need netzach when it comes to becoming a better person, when it comes to refining my character traits. But what is hod within myself? Hod is surrender to a higher power. That's what hod is. The ability to surrender ourselves to a higher power. So let's just take a look at these two. In their parallels in the human body, netzach and hod, they correspond to the two thighs. And what does yesod correspond to? It corresponds to the reproductive organ. Just as the thighs support the body and transport the body to its destination, so to netzach and hod, they channel the other sefirot, the other emotional sefirot. They bring them down. So you have loving kindness, you have gvura, chesed and gvura and teferet. How do you put them into the action, into your life? You use netzach and hod to put them into your life. The word netzach comes from the word menatseach, meaning to conquer or to overcome. So netzach is about dominance. By giving in the same way chesed has no end, netzach has no end. Netzach is unlimited. One is overwhelming the other. And in this respect, it's an extension of chesed. Hod is just the opposite. By being an extension of gevura, it is what we don't have. It's submission. Hod comes from the word hoda'ah, means to think or to admit or to submit. Total dominance over another is the netzach relationship, while total submission is the hod relationship. Yesod balances the two. It facilitates communication and therefore is the foundation of the world. If you want to be in a relationship, there needs to be, in every situation in your relationship, there needs to be dominant and there needs to be submissive. I'm not saying that there needs to be one person who's dominant and one person who's submissive, but in every situation in your relationship, there's one person. For example, if I'm talking, you have to be listening. So in this state, I would be the dominant and you would be the submissive, only because if we both talked at the same time, well, we would be arguing or we wouldn't be able to hear each other. So in order to listen, you need hod. You need the submissive part of ourselves to listen. And listening is just as important or even more important than the talking. In order to be a good talker, you have to also be a good listener. So in every situation that you're going to encounter, in every relationship, you're going to have an element that is going to be a netzach element and a hod element, a victory, an ambition element, and a submission and a passive element. Do we follow? Is this good? I'm sorry about all the background noise, but somehow I'm home and my kids decided to be around. So you may see them popping in and out. Okay, so Netzach and Hod, the same way Chesed has no end, and Gevura is stop of Chesed, the same way Netzach has no end, and Hod is where Gevura is where Netzach stops. Victory, being victorious, that ambition, it has no end. Where's the end? When you stop talking and you start listening. And if you don't listen, you never spoke. You know, one of the weirdest things, maybe you can relate to this, is the first time, or if you never hear yourself recorded, and you start hearing yourself recording, you're like, that's how I sound? Because when you're listening to yourself, your ears are over here and your mouth is here. But then you hear yourself recorded, like, that's what people hear me. Ugh, that's terrible. And I think it's a great metaphor for if we never listened, then we never spoke. Like, Hod is such a powerful part of who we are because we need to be able to listen to ourselves. And so often we're not listening to our internal dialogues. We're just not listening to ourselves, and we're not listening to others. We're spending our time thinking about what's the next thing we're going to say instead of listening. What's going to happen? Our minds are wandering when someone's talking. A symbol of a connected person is when someone talks, you listen, and you're there. You give them 100% of your focus. That's the symbol of a true relationship. You're there. As a teenager, I lived in the home of a very well-known rabbi for a little while. And I observed something in that home that forever will be implanted in my heart and mind. And I've observed many things in that home, and it taught me, being there taught me a tremendous amount about life. But one of the things, so one day, the rabbi was always out, he was never home, and it was the Rebbetzin, the woman of the home was always there. And they had this open concept home, and she was cooking in the kitchen. So I was sitting in the living room, but I could see, because it was all open concept, I could see into the kitchen. And I'm sitting there reading, I'm minding my own business. At the time, there were two kids that were home. One was, I would say, 9, and the other one was probably 10 or 11. She's cooking for Shabbat. She's Thursday night. She's preparing for Shabbat. And her 11-year-old comes running up the stairs. Mommy, I have to tell you something. And you see this woman stops, drops everything like there was a fire. Like there was a fire. She drops everything. And she focuses 100% on this child. Yes, what would you like? I want to tell you a joke. And the child goes on to tell this joke to the mom. She laughs hysterically. The child laughs. She gives the child a kiss. The child goes running off to play, and she continues cooking. Not 5 minutes go by, and the 9-year-old comes running up the stairs. Mommy, I have to tell you a joke. Once again, she drops everything like it was a fire. Looks, focuses on this child, and says yes. And the child continues to tell her the same exact joke. She listens attentively, laughs with the child laughs. She kisses the child goes off. Now I'm observing this scene. And of course, I watched the scene. I have to ask. So I put down my book and I walk over to the counter that was dividing the kitchen from the living room. And I said to her, okay, you heard the joke 5 minutes ago. How did you laugh? How did you put on that fake laugh? You put on that was an authentic laugh. How did you laugh with your 9-year-old like you laughed with your 11-year-old? That was a fake laugh. She's like, no, it wasn't. It was a real laugh. But you just heard the joke. She looks at me and she says, I wasn't laughing at the joke. I was laughing with my child. That was one of the greatest examples I've seen of focused parenting. We have Netzach and we have Yehod. Netzach tells us, be ambitious, conquer the world. The world is your gefilte fish. Hod tells us, relax, humility. You're not all that big. You're not all that great. Just relax. Yesod is the connection. What is the connection? Think about it a second. What's the connection? The ability to reproduce. It's the reproductive organ. Yesod is that ability to bond. It's the ability to be intimate with another person. It's the capacity of our soul to bond to another. The ability to go into someone else's world. The ability not to laugh at the joke, to laugh with the child. That's what Yesod is. That is where we want. Again, the middle row is where we want to be. The same way we want to have Da'at, and the same way we want to have Tiferet, we want to have Yesod. So the triangle of intellectual, we know that. The triangle of emotional, we know. This is the triangle of functional. Netzach, Hod, and Yesod is our functional triangle. You can talk for 20 years and never hear yourself. And the first time you hear yourself, you don't recognize yourself. Because speaking and listening is very different. Yesod, what does Yesod say? What is this bonding? What is intimacy? I will say what you need to hear, not what I want to hear. I'm the audience, not the speaker. Sorry about all the noise in the back. It comes with the territory. I hope you don't mind. Maybe I'll have them all come say hi at some point. So I don't want to use this as an example, but I have no other example that I could think of right now. The example I want to give is his name should be erased, but Hitler. I was reading a biography of Hitler. Very important to read biographies of people that you hate. Something that I do and I recommend. You want to know who they are. Because if you have a strong emotion towards someone, either an emotion of love or hate or fear or whatever it is, then it's something within you. And obviously just the thought of him conjures up very, very strong emotions for me. So I read a biography. And the biographer was saying that every single day, Hitler used to spend between 6 and 7 hours looking at himself in the mirror and speaking. And he had the power, the ability to influence a generation for the negative. But he influenced a generation of people, hundreds of thousands of people through his power of speech. People will not debate that he was one of the greatest orators of the 20th century. And he did it through his power of speech. And how did he do it? By listening to himself speak between 6 and 7 hours a day. That is the power of speech through the element of Yesod. Yesod is such a powerful part of who we are because it is the essence of our relationships. That is what Yesod is. Now I'll show you. Now that we did these 6, I'm going to show you a couple of interesting things. I mean, I could go into so many elements. So, if you know in Jewish history, what year are we in? Anyone know what year we're in?
I'm going to say 5781. 5781.
5781. 5781. Every single millennia corresponds to a different one of the 7 emotions. So for example, if you take a look at the first 1,000 years of the world, you'll see Adam, and the way that God corresponds to this world was a way of chesed, was totally about loving kindness. Then, right in the beginning of the second millennium was the flood. God treated the world through Gvura. The flood is the ultimate lesson of Gvura. Then, the beginning of the third millennia was the Sinai experience, the Jewish people at Sinai, and God taking the Jews out of Egypt, and that was Tiferet, right? That was kindness with boundaries. There was a kindness there, but also there was a lot of Gvura there. That was Tiferet, right? I mean, nice to the Jews, maybe not so nice to the Egyptians, for example. Now, if you look at the beginning of the fourth millennia, in the year 2928, which is right in the beginning of the fourth millennia, that is the year that the temple was built. And that's Netzach. That was the greatest time for the Jewish people. That was when Solomon reigned. Through Solomon's years, King Solomon were the greatest years for the Jewish people, in general for the world. The world was in a state of peace. There was no war during the years that he reigned at all, anywhere. The fifth millennia, right in the beginning of the fifth millennia, which was 3528, the second temple was destroyed. And then in the year 3988 was the Bar Kokhba revolution and the expulsion. That was when we were expelled from Israel until we went back till the state of Israel in 1948. That was when we were expelled from Israel. So that was the idea of Hod. Yesod is where we are now. We're in the time of Yesod. What is that? The sexual revolution, communism. That is a time where right now, where obviously there was a time where we had the Holocaust as well. But now at this point, it's about people trying to find their soul, trying to find their Yesod, trying to find their foundation, trying to find who they are, trying to find people trying to get into real relationships. I see this all over now, and it's so incredible to see how we're looking for authenticity. We're looking for love. We're looking for real. People saying, I don't have time to have conversations with people, who are fake. I want to have a real conversation. I want to get to the essence. I want to understand who I am. I want to understand who I am, and I want to understand who my partner is. I want to have a real relationship with someone. This is the world that we live in now. Maybe years ago, people could be fake, but today we can't be fake anymore. What does Yesod tell us? Yesod tells us, Netzach, we know. Hod, we know. Yesod says, whatever is most difficult, this is your mission. There was a professor at Cambridge, and he taught ethics and mathematics. And he was caught in a scandal, terrible scandal. And his students asked him, but you teach us ethics. How can you be the one that's caught in a scandal? You're the ethics teacher. So he looks at them and he says, I also teach geometry and I'm not a triangle. Yesod is our desire to be truthful to ourselves. We cannot accept that an ethics teacher is going to be caught up in a scandal. We have to be one with that which we learn. That is the functionality of Yesod. Becoming one with what we learn. Becoming one with who we are. That is what we want more than anything else. And from there, so now we did the intellectual, we did the emotional, and we did the functional. Now there's one more Sefirah. And that Sefirah is what brings everything into action. It's called Malchut. What is Malchut? Malchut is everything together. It's the ultimate realization that the first Sefirah, the Sefirah of Chachma, that was Koach Ma, the potential for what is, Malchut is called Ma, that which is. So Chachma had the potential, but Malchut, Ma, is it. It's it. It's everything. It's the act of being in a relationship. What happens to you? Can you actually take all these ideas and put them into action? That's Malchut. You can love yourself, but you can't be married to yourself. Marriage means you have a relationship with someone else. That's Malchut. Malchut gives us the ability to co-create with God. Malchut is the ability for us to be in a relationship with God. It doesn't exert any influence on its own, except that which the other Sefirot pour into it. It's the ultimate receptacle. It's the vessel. It's the receiver. It's often compared to the moon that has no light of its own, but reflects the sun's light as a new entity. The purpose of creation is to reveal God's sovereignty through the creation of subjects who are separate entities. Malchut, the reason why it's not part of any of the triangles, because it's a separate entity all on its own. Malchut is the ability to take all of the other Sefirot and to bring them into action, to bring them into your life. So in the human model that we're talking about, there's intellect, there's emotions. The intellect and the emotions, they are the soul powers, and they dwell within the body. The intellect is in the mind, and the emotions in the heart. The person's willpower, the person's pleasure, they transcend any particular organ. But then there's the functional element of our lives. And then there's Malchut. It's our ability to take all of the theoretical, spiritual, intellectual, emotional, and bring them down to the point where they affect who we are. They affect our actions. Because our job, remember, what did we say the most important of all the Sefirot is Da'at. Why is Da'at the most important? Because the entire purpose is not to study this and say, oh, that was a nice study. That rabbi, that was very interesting. It's to actually bring it into our life into a way that it changes us. It changes who we are. That's what it's all about. The ability to change our actions, that we should be different people on the other side of this. That all of a sudden tomorrow we start saying, oh my gosh, am I using chesed or am I using gevura? Oh, I have this great desire to do this. Netzach. Hold on a second. Hold. Oh, but Yesod, I need that Yesod. Okay. And that's what Malchut is. So I'm going to tell you something very interesting. We talk about feminine and masculine, right? So the right side is the masculine energy and the left side is the feminine energy, and the middle is the balance of the two. But in relation to Malchut, everything is masculine and Malchut is feminine. Because Malchut, it's only the feminine energy that really has the ability to bring things into action. The masculine energy is all theoretical. In order to take the theoretical and to turn it into something that's practical, we need the feminine energy in our life. Otherwise, everything stays theoretical. Now, remember, we all have masculine and feminine energy. We're not saying the differentiation between men and women. We're just saying that is the feminine energy is what brings this down into our life and makes it practical and makes it real. What do you think?
I'm looking forward to this week ahead where I can apply, or not necessarily apply, but just maybe categorize, think about where does that fall? Because I think this is fascinating. And then see how that feels.
And I think it's important, like if you're having, especially if you're having an emotional experience, and it's interesting because there's so many other emotions, psychology talks about so many emotions that we didn't discuss. These are the Kabbalistic emotions are nothing like Freud's emotions. Who talks about victory and submission? But it's so much part of who we are. It's true, we have the ambition, but we also have the submission.
Yeah.
We have the loving kindness, but we also have that severity. We also have that gvura. And just starting to analyze where all of that lands and what all that does for us, I think is very powerful and very, very important.
Yeah, just thinking about different situations, and it's already helping me clarify them, I guess.
So I've learned that you really work much better in small groups. So I'm going to do again another 5-minute thing, and I want you to teach the Sefirot to each other. Each person could take a Sefirah and teach it, or you can. I want you to, because the best way to learn is by teaching. That's the best way to learn. So I want you to teach it to the point where at least you understand it. I want you to walk away from this class understanding Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. That's our goal. And if you want to do Chachma Bina Dat just for review, that's also good. So we're just going to do a 6-minute, again, another 6-minute breakout, and then we'll come back. Okay. What did we learn?
It's definitely we need male and female to combine between the theoretical and practical.
Oh, yes? Did we discover that? Okay. So we're coming to a close of our session for this evening, but I would love to hear what you're taking home from this class. What is a nugget? Just something that you're taking home. You can just, I now know that, something you're taking into your week with you. We're going to start with Stephanie.
Yeah, we're just talking about this in the group, that to try to maybe stay in the middle of this chart, have a little bit of both sides and have a little bit of balance between the two. And then I also had a question for you. Last week you said the right side was projective, the left was withdrawal, and the middle was integrative. So I guess my question is, like, what did you mean by that?
Well, projective meaning like chesed is projective, right?
So that whole
The
side
whole right
would be
side, netzach is projective, exactly. And then bina, well, actually, gvura and hod are more passive, right?
right.
And the middle is the integrative.
Okay.
So what is one thing so you trying to find the middle, like, can you see that coming into your life at all? I'm sorry to push you a bit, but
Yeah. We were talking about this also earlier, that sometimes I have a hard time saying no. But lately what I've been doing is, instead of giving a yes or a no, sometimes I can't process things right in the moment and I just don't know. So what I've been doing lately is telling the person, I will think about it and let you know, and then
fair.
give my answer, because this way I'm not saying yes to something that I'm not comfortable doing, or saying no without really thinking about it.
And that's really fair. That's great.
Yeah.
Because you're not saying I didn't hear you. You're saying I heard you. I just don't have a response right now. And that's fine.
Right, exactly. And instead of not responding at all, which I hate when people do that.
Right. That's great. So that's a great middle. That's a great balance. Fantastic. Thank you, Stephanie. Meryl, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I like this rubric for decision making and to understand where you're at, because sometimes, to stop and reflect and to realize where do you stand in any situation. Sometimes we think we know, but I think upon further reflection and using this methodology, that'd be really helpful. I mean, I think that when you asked us to give examples, I had an example, but I didn't have this terminology to explain that example. And now this concept and this terminology that I can use to explain it, like the way you explain the homeless person, I think is just like, it's just illuminating.
Amazing. Thank you. Mimi, what about you? No, we can't hear you. Sorry. Yeah, try again.
Good. Yeah, sorry, it got moved. I think it's in every day we have those decision to make. Right now we have, as Meryl said, we have the terminology. Now I know if I'm leaning towards the kindness, that's a chesed, or towards gvura, which is more the boundaries. I don't see that. Yeah, the middle is the perfect balance, but I think not always is the perfect solution, in my opinion.
Well, it depends on the person, right? If you're someone
Yes.
if you're not extreme of either of the two, then the middle won't be really the middle. Your middle may look different than the middle.
Yes, exactly.
And Maimonides, I will say this, and this may help you. Maimonides says that if you want to change a behavior, you have to go to the opposite extreme. And then you'll end up in the middle. You don't strive for the middle, you strive for the opposite extreme, and naturally you'll end up in the middle. So I think that's a really good barrier right there of how to make that change is try doing. So if you're a yes person, just try it for a day, become a no person, see what happens. Just go to the
Yes.
opposite extreme and then see how that feels. And then you're going to naturally, because it's not going to feel good to you to be a no person if you're a yes person, or the opposite way around. So you will naturally end up in the middle, but that's the goal. So your balance of the two may be different than the balance of the two. But that's a very
Exactly.
good point that you're saying, Mimi. Very good point. Thank you. Yeah. Sabrina?
I really like this class. Thank you. I think that I really resonated with Yesod, like bonding, and it's like being true to yourself. You like being in the middle of like the drive of ambition and the submission of like not doing. And I think like exactly like you just said, like the balance. Like I was thinking for myself, like to try to be more in the middle, to have more balance of both in each of these situations, and to change is to go to the opposite end. Like I was just thinking that. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. And Julia?
Well, I like to quote you. So anyway, I know that you have said before, if you always say yes, you've never really said no. And if you've never really said no, if you've never said no, you've never really said yes. So if you don't listen, you've never really spoken. That hit me tonight. So thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I think about that a lot. Yeah, thank you.
This means me too. I
Yeah,
used to use it in my fifth grade classroom.
now I know. Me too. Okay. Jill, what about you?
I liked when you spoke about the different millennia and that we are in current millennia of Yesod, and that we're finding our authentic self, and that's our search, and makes me not feel like such an oddball. So thank you.
We're all in this together, and it's interesting because our grandparents weren't they didn't have time for it. They didn't care about it. They weren't in this millennia. This is really our struggle, and I say it struggle in a positive way, right? I've spoken about this before, but I believe that struggle is a positive thing. Struggle is good. We need struggle, right? That's what Netzach and Hod is. It's it's the balance. It's the struggle.
Mhm.
My grandfather used to say the same thing that keeps the Brooklyn Bridge up, kills most people, right? Stress. We need the stress. We need the stress.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ben, what about you?
I like the Maimonides quote that you said to, I think, Sabrina. I'm not sure.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Try it.
I like the Maimonides.
Oh,
The fact that, shoot, there's so much, but also,
yeah.
there's
So if you want
the
to go to
fact,
the opposite, yeah.
Yeah, the going to the opposite extreme is really interesting. And also, I didn't know that Hitler spent 6 to 7 hours looking at himself in the mirror.
So I feel bad that I used that example, but it's just such a good example for it.
Okay. Anyway, I learned that.
My grandfather would not be happy that I used that example.
Sorry.
Kelsey, what about you?
It's hard to narrow it down to just one thing tonight.
So give me your top 10. Give me the whole manifesto.
Oh man. I mean, I feel like every week the class is made for me. I know that I need to be better about setting boundaries and not like giving so much in certain areas. And like this just like really put a visual to how I need to balance everything out, I guess. And that's okay, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like a bad person for that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
And MJ?
Like, it's a bit hard to put it in one or two, but I think one of the first things that actually hit me is the same thing as Benjamin. It's the Hitler situation that he
Really?
spoke to himself, and I was like, was speaking, saying what? What was he saying? And I kept like, and I couldn't focus after for a while. I was like, what are you doing in front of me? What are you saying? And then he was saying, no, this is it. This is powerful. Speaking is powerful. And then I was just, there. Then I was like, okay, come back to the class, MJ, and just focus. But I kept thinking, but what are you saying to yourself that would I'm so sorry, it's such a bad example, but that would propel you so well.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I could, do you know what I mean? And it's like, what?
For hate, we should figure out how to do that for good.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. Because yes, I have nothing to add to that. You're completely correct. But
Yeah.
it hit me a bit. It hit me a bit because if he was so good for bad, do you know what I mean? Maybe we could be so good for good, if I could put it or speak to. Anyways, so that was this. And then there was something else. I was very much taken by the Chesed, Abraham, Gevurah, Yitzhak, and then Tifi,
Tiferet.
Jacob.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And then he opened his tent and he was very generous, humble leadership. And like, I just really like that. And then you said Isaac was 37 years old. He was a grown man. Okay. So it was not
By
really
the way,
Abraham.
just because
Yes.
you mentioned it, Moses is Yesod.
Oh,
And
oh,
Joseph is Netzach. Just because you mentioned it.
oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, I love that. See, that's why we have to stay till 10, so we get more. Anyways, all that.
There's so
So
much.
it was yeah. Oh, there was one last thing because I kept asking in the group. I'm actually fascinated by the fact that you said last week that one side is actually masculine. I know it's not boy or girl or whatever, but one side is actually masculine and one side is feminine energy. But the
Yes,
feminine energy, unless I'm wrong, is Gevura, is odd, and
that's,
all the rest.
that's right.
So I was a bit, do you understand what and then therefore
Gevurah is
masculine energy.
considered feminine energy. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then masculine is chesed. And then anyways,
Yes. That's
I don't
why.
even know why I'm,
That's why
uh-huh.
often men need a woman to give them boundaries. Say no, you can't do that. That's what
Oh,
a
wow.
good wife. Her job is to say, you have to got to put a stop to the chesed. A lot of women
Interesting.
in relationships, a lot of women tend to do that
Interesting.
because that's the nature of the. I mean, I'm not saying men and women, but the male female energy. That's the nature. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Laura,
It
what?
was awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. What about you?
So the HUD Sefirot is really something like I've been trying to do like daily. Like listening inside and outside. I feel like it means being submissive, right? But it's like as well from our exterior world and from like our inner world. Like let's be aware of like our thoughts and also be aware of the people around us and how they are. I think the way to be authentic is you have to like listen a lot and not really like talk so much. Like sometimes like you just talk a lot because it's a self-defense mechanism sometimes and you don't realize you're doing it.
Somebody once told me that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you speak.
And actually, the word Yehudi, because I've been praying these days, and I did 2 drawings when I pray, and I look at them, and I wrote Yehudi, and if you see Yehudi, if you think that the yud is a chachma, like the little idea and the
Yes.
for everything, the studs would say the yud at the end of Yehudi, and then you put the yud in the hey, in the resh, and it becomes the resh, which is the development of the yud, which is the conceptualization that you mentioned,
Yes.
and so you actually get the name of Hashem.
Yeah, that's what that's
So,
yeah, that you end up actually Hashem goes the name Yud Hey and then Vav Hey, it actually goes through all three triangles. Yeah.
so I really like this class because that I would like to I separate like myself into these attributes too.
I actually
Like to understand how I feel.
we only went like through the basics, but I do have quite a few classes that I've given on the Sefirot, so I can definitely send them if anybody wants to listen to them. I can load them up this week, and some of them I go in quite deep into the ideas behind the Sefirot as well, which will give you more. It'll give you more of an understanding of some of the stuff that you're referring to, Laura.
Yeah, personally, I've been blocking certain of these.
Yeah.
That's why, like, it's been hard.
Yeah, sure. So then I think that will help. Oh, we'll do that. Well, thank you. Zinzi, you're last for this evening.
I liked the class today. It was very helpful. Thank you. There's a lot to consider. Yeah, I don't know one thing in particular, except that the nature of rejection is passive. That's like pretty fascinating. And then also, sorry, I forgot her name, but someone else pointed out if you're not listening, then you've never listened or like never spoken. That whole thing, which definitely is a little tricky with kids because I feel like I am kind of in this fog where my primal brain is all that's online, and I'm having a hard time staying present with others besides Olive, but that probably transfers into our relationship too. So wanting to stay more present, definitely, and like this context of thinking about that. So it's bedtime.
Oh, it sounds like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, with that, I'm not going to keep anyone. I'm happy to stay here for a little extra time, even though we did go quite over today. But if you need to go, you can go. Please don't let us keep you. But anyone who'd like to stay, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, I'm happy to continue the conversation.